So first off, I am going to share a PowerPoint that we created that hopefully will assist you in kind of learning a little bit more about our program. Can everyone see this? All right. So the Meyerson Project was first established in 1999 and launched in 2000. And we have been represented, so this is a campus-wide initiative that has been in over 45 disciplines, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And to date, we have been able to invest almost $1 million in 400 nonprofit agencies. So what is the Meyerson Project? A basic overview is that faculty contact us and say, hey, I'm interested in teaching with the Meyerson Project. And then we give the class $2,000 in grant money. And the faculty are responsible, the faculty members responsible for connecting the community engagement component of the course to the learning outcomes of the course that is being taught. And we really, what's neat about this program is that we really give each faculty member kind of free rein to decide how that is best done. We do have an outline of core procedures, which I'll describe in just a minute, but that is how it works. So this program is open to any faculty that has an interest in exploring how community engagement can enhance the learning of their subject. And my role as faculty coordinator is to help faculty, and especially new faculty, if they're interested, kind of talk out different ways that we do this and how to come up with some creative ideas for new faculty that are interested in pursuing this opportunity. So several core procedures for the Meyerson Project. Of course, we ask that faculty connect the course learning outcomes to the community engagement component. They have to be integrated into the course. The other important thing is that there has to be, the process has to come from students, so it needs to be student-centered and student-driven. In other words, the faculty member can't pick a nonprofit themselves and then tell the students that they have to give the money to that nonprofit. There has to be some type of choosing involved that's coming from the students. So this, of course, touches upon the aspect of learning and discovery coming from the students. And how I teach with Meyerson, I think I can speak for all of us on the panel that we're kind of the facilitators of the project, but really the students are the stars of this. And I think that's a really important thing to touch upon, especially when thinking about high impact practices. Students being able to discover, make realizations about themselves, about the community, about others, how they can give, and how they can apply the skills of learning in the classroom to the community. Another important procedure is that the $2,000 must be invested in a 501c3 nonprofit, and it has to be already established as a 501c3, so it can't be a nonprofit, unfortunately, that might have an application in but hasn't been approved. It has to be an approved nonprofit. It can also be a government agency or a public school. Or public school program. So we've had a mix of all of these invested by different classes over the years. And the other procedure that we encourage, we really like faculty to use service learning pedagogy in this process in some way. And one important part of service learning pedagogy is the opportunity for individual and collective reflection. So with that, I'm going to open it up to our first panelist, our first speaker. And if I can get PowerPoint to work. So here we go. John Kulik will be taking the stage next.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, for my own teaching, I define a high impact practice as anything that I can do that engages students by appealing not only to their curiosity, but to their values. And I think that at NKU, this is appealing to do because our students are decent, caring people and they want to do good for others. And so I make this work in a writing course by appealing to students' sense of fairness and ethics in their writing. For example, when I'm teaching a unit on persuasion, I'm going to teach the students principles of persuasion, but it's not just a bunch of rules, not just a bunch of do's and don'ts, not just the mechanics. I start with asking them how to appeal to a reader. I ask them, has anybody ever been persuaded because they were insulted or yelled at? What's the right way to treat others and to persuade others? And I want to guide the students to realize that they need to listen to others and understand what they value, and that approach will make you more persuasive. Even grammar, I address as a matter of values. Proofreading and good grammar will make you more persuasive because it means you're showing respect to your readers and it raises your own credibility. So I start just with the foundational principle that an education that engages the mind is only half an education, that we must also engage the heart. So that's why I bring community outreach into writing instruction. I think that a basic truth of improving writing, whether we're talking about the first grade or the 12th grade or college or graduate school, is that we write more effectively when we care about the thing that we're writing about. So I integrate the Mayerson Project and community outreach in general into my writing courses. I like to use Mayerson for English 101. It meshes really well with the writing goals. In English 101, our course goals are to for the student to write for college level audiences and purposes, to develop and organize complex ideas in writing, to understand how their writing affects readers, to identify other writers' decisions, to locate, evaluate, employ sources, and of course to edit, proofread, and design their documents. Well, with the Mayerson Project, my students identify community needs. They locate, evaluate, and use sources to learn about and write about those needs. They evaluate the applications and websites of nonprofit organizations that apply for funding. So they're practicing some skills in identifying how other writers are trying to be persuasive. They also write persuasive essays to convince each other to invest the funds in the organizations of their choice. I also use additional kinds of community service in writing that we do in the course. And so at the bottom of my PowerPoint, I indicated an example of an assignment that I do where I start the course by having the students and myself, we all participate, engage in some small act of kindness or service and then write about the experience. Throughout our writing program at NKU, we start the students in some sort of personal narrative. And so I integrate service into the narrative. I ask them to identify a need that they see in their own school or neighborhood or community, and then to engage in that service and then to write descriptively about it. And so we use that activity as the basis for studying descriptive writing and practicing narrative and descriptive writing. All right, so why do I do all this? Well, ultimately, I want my students to discover that the ability to communicate effectively with writing is not only a personal good, but it is a public good. I always tell them the final result of their writing is not only a grade, they're writing to help others. So, we care about our students knowing how to write well, to develop ideas, to organize, cite sources, write with good grammar, all that good stuff. But when we appeal to their sense of fairness and goodness, I have found that all of those writing skills become much easier to address. Community service, it's a great good in of itself, and it's just a great vehicle for fulfilling course objectives. Thanks.
Thank you. So next, we will have Christy Hoppensberger talk about her class on, well, I'll let you talk about it.
Hi everyone, I'm Christy Hoppensberger. I'm the director of the Environmental Science Program in Biology at NKU. And I have a lot going on this slide because I only wanted to have one slide. So I've been using the Marison Project for many years now, and I have so much fun with it. If you haven't tried it, I encourage you to, because like Kaisa said, it's so flexible. And so what I wanted to do was just provide you some examples of how I've used the Marison Project in different types of courses. So the first one is a general education course I teach called Protecting Water Resources. And I use the Marison Project to help the students learn about our local water resources and to also learn about all the work that's going on by volunteers and people in our community to help provide us clean water in our region. And so to use the Marison Project in this class, students work both individually on assignments and in some teams. They start out by just researching what organizations exist in our region, and they're always amazed by how many they find. And then I also help the students to think about what do they need to know from these organizations to make a good decision on who they want to donate the Marison funds to. So we spend a class talking about information and what type of information they need. Students then read all of the proposals that we receive, and they have class discussions on that. And then they choose their top 3 or 4 organizations. This is where I get really excited as the teacher, because I invite these people then into the classroom to not advocate to get the funds, but to tell the students about the work they do and what their organization does. At the end of the semester, when students write their reflections on this project, they always talk about how they're so amazed that so many people give their time and effort to these environmental topics. After the visits, then students get to decide how they want to vote. Thank you, Axel, for some of those new options. Desperately needed those to guide the students. And after the students decide how they want to do the vote, they vote on who the money goes to. So that's how I do that in more of a topic-focused general education course. And then my models 2 and 3, I really focus on service learning. And these I'm just playing around with, trying different ways of using the Marison Project. This is an upper level class with a very generic title, Environmental Science Seminar. And I use it as a kind of junior, senior level capstone course. Students are working in the project-based model. Students work in teams for a whole semester with one organization, and at the end of the semester, they have completed an end product for the community partner. I try to teach the students that this is an opportunity to build their resume. This is not just a class project for a grade. And so through the Marison Project, students start to learn more about the organization, and then they learn with the help of another Marison colleague, Jeff Fox, in communications. He comes in and talks a little bit about persuasive communication, which I also teach our environmental science students that this is a little bit about science communication and how we talk about environmental issues with the community. I also tell my students this is a great way to learn how to advocate for yourself for a job using these persuasive techniques in interviews. But then the students give team presentations to their peers on why the individual student should vote for their organization. And then one semester, I altered this model a little bit to this volunteer model because the topic I chose for the semester was environmental inequalities. And I really wanted us to delve into that for the semester. So instead of the teams doing a end product for a community organization, we found teams that were working on environmental inequalities like food insecurity or access to the outdoors. And the individuals in the teams spent 20 hours volunteering with these organizations for the semester to really learn what it means to be involved and working and advocating on these issues in our community. And then they did the same model of the persuasive presentations. So these are just some examples of how I've used the Marison project in my courses. And for anyone listening, I wanted to say that I am a huge support, a huge advocate for doing service learning or working with community partners in your class. I've done this a lot of different ways, not using the Marison project as well. And I'm happy to talk offline with anyone at any time about that. And a fun thing I'm trying to navigate right now with our new online world is this project-based mode, and I'm switching it up for my online semester, and I'm really excited about how I'm doing that to not tax the community partner with too much of a time commitment. And we're going to be working on creating, instead of a big end product, we're going to be doing small assignments that build a portfolio that we can then give to our community partner at the end of the semester. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited right now. We'll check in December. Thank you.
And there is the creativity right at work. All right, we'll move on to our next speaker, Axel Brandt. Here we go.
Great, thanks. I guess this is not my slides anymore. But so I've done the Marison project in one of my courses. It happened to be the Mathematics for Liberal Arts course. If you're not familiar, it's a 100 level gen ed quantitative reasoning requirement. Most of the students that take that course are typically non-STEM students. It's maybe fair to say that if given the option, they wouldn't enroll in a maths course. So when I heard about the Marison project, the first thing that came to mind was it as an opportunity for the students to really meaningfully engage with a lot of the course content. When I taught the course, one of the themes throughout the entire semester was about interpreting data as presented in different media outlets and just around the world. So the fact that we were now going to be looking into organizations offered an opportunity for students to actually collect, analyze, and present some numerical data. So I guess I should mention, sort of the model for the project that I used was sort of the first half of Christie's second and third model, where the students get into groups, find and then advocate for an organization, and then vote for the award. And so in researching their organization and what they do, one of the things that we added from a data standpoint was going back and looking at some of the nonprofit tax returns and looking at some of the financial data. Very basic, nothing too big. We're not doing audits. And having that. Perhaps the largest thing, and perhaps the focus of the slides here, is there's a module in that course about voting methods, and we talk about a variety of alternative methods. The big takeaway from that conversation is that there's no perfect voting system. And so at the end of it, it was like, all right, well, we have now all of these options. We've talked about the strengths and weaknesses for each of them. Let's figure out which one works best for our voting at the end of the semester. And so in that sense, it was really nice to have this sort of collaborative, collective decision-making that started with course content and then ended at the end of the project. So my role in pretty much most of that was just to help conversations about group formation and touching base with the groups about the nominating process, We avoided the sort of circular, well, how do we vote on how we should vote conversation sort of by an assignment. At the end of the module, it was make an argument for which method you want to use. And sort of I benevolent dictated it and said, here's what we're going to do. At the end of the semester, after the groups presented, there was a Qualtrics survey for them to rank their preferences. They had selected, I didn't talk about the different methods on the slide, but they had picked board account, where basically they rank the candidates, and then at the top of your list, those candidates get more points than those at the bottom of your list. And so, yeah, and then I had an Excel sheet that auto-tabulated the results. So in class at the end of presentations, they all got on their phone onto a document, and I imported them, and we had the results immediately. I think in the future, I would make them actually do the content to circle back and, refresh that. But so that was really fun. That Excel sheet, and I'm glad Christy mentioned that options are available. I'll plug it a little bit. I've shared that Excel sheet. It auto-tabulates a lot of the voting methods that are up there. I'm still working on one or two. I can't remember. I think maybe Copeland's not done yet. But if you're looking for ways to do class decision-making and voting and stuff like that, I think that's available on the Mayerson course page. So you can either email Kaisa to get access to that, or I'm happy to share. Just shoot me an email, let me know. So yeah, I think that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Axel. All right, next up. I don't know why I'm having problems here, but Julie. Julie Olberding is going to be talking about her course.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Olberding, and I teach in the Master of Public Administration program, and we have a nonprofit management certificate. So I didn't know we could have more than one slide, so I just packed it all into one, which is probably a good thing to keep my talk at 5 minutes or around that. I'll just say that 3 presenters before me really provided great information, and I knew that they would, so I was trying to think of ways that I could add value to this particular presentation. I found a conceptual framework about service learning that really resonated with me during the past year and has helped me progress my research in certain areas. So I thought I would share that with you. And I think it relates to, honestly, the overall purpose of our workshop today of high impact processes. And when I think about high impact, I'm thinking about students and student outcomes. So that's kind of how I think it relates. So this conceptual framework is based on service learning. As Kaisa said, we look at student philanthropy oftentimes under the umbrella of service learning. So I think it fits well. This was originally done by Lori Britt, who's a communications professor at James Madison. I'm going to walk through it quickly and then talk about how it applies to 2 other models that I use that I don't think have talked about fully yet. So this probably makes sense, but the way that it was presented originally when I looked at it is it was very kind of stoic in a table of cognitive outcomes, civic outcomes, and consciousness outcomes. I've seen it presented more in a pyramid format, starting with cognitive and working up. But to me, I really like the approach of it being a Venn diagram, because I think the primary approach really depends on the class, the SLOs, the faculty, all those sorts of things. And I can even say, for one of my classes, cognitive outcomes are very important. For another one, civic outcomes are very important. So especially for those of you maybe that haven't done service learning or student philanthropy, this might help you think about how to enter or think about student philanthropy in your own courses. So with cognitive outcomes, it's really thinking about student philanthropy or service learning as a lab, where students can apply what they're learning in class in the real world to some degree or another. So for one of my classes, resource acquisition and management, the key service learning outcome, or one of them at least, is to learn about grant making and therefore grant writing. So in that sense, this is kind of the primary cognitive outcome or approach that I use for that class. This is all hindsight. You know, of course, I've done this for 15 years, so it's kind of retrospective sense making that I'm using now to, oh yeah, this is what I was doing all along, this cognitive approach. But anyhow, civic outcomes would be, you know, trying to encourage our students to think of themselves in relationship with the community. That community could be NKU, it could be our region, and for some of our classes which are online, that community could be international, because I know some of our student philanthropy courses work with NGOs and other international organizations. So the service learning outcome may be to learn more about nonprofit organizations in our region. And then lastly, there's this consciousness outcome where we are thinking about students as being social activists or social advocates, depending on how you look at it. And it's really trying to spark an interest in them to make change, to make a positive difference in the world, in their community. And this may be, I think about classes like some of our social work classes that have used student philanthropy. I think the English class, Writing for Social Change, this is probably a more prevalent approach for that particular class. I'll mention briefly, I have used a model called indirect giving. I think we just do one class every year. We've been recently partnering with the Duke Energy Foundation. So students in my class review, assess, and provide input on real grant applications. This past spring, they had 27 grant applications that they reviewed, gave input to Duke. Of course, Duke has final say. They have boards and decision-making committees that are also reviewing the grant applications. But each year, the quarter that we've worked with them, they've invested about $250,000 into nonprofit organizations in our region, including some of those connected with NKU. These are the K through 12 classes. And I know we're probably running out of time, so just real quickly, I did a fully online student philanthropy class in fall 2018. I'm happy to talk with people about that, but it kind of follows the pattern that Christy talked about, except it was online. So I put students in small groups. The class was called Leading in Diverse Public Environments. So it was really about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so students researched organizations in our region that focus on those areas. So for that class, I would say the Student Philanthropy Project probably had the approach more of civic outcomes and maybe leaning toward consciousness outcomes. The last thing I'll leave you with is the big question, I think, is does student philanthropy in an online format have similar outcomes or impacts to face-to-face? And I've been working with Megan Downing on some research. She's incorporated it in her online classes multiple times. So we have analyzed the data, and it looks like in the kind of grouped in the areas that we talked about, the outcomes are similar and positive in our online classes in terms of students being active learners, community members, and social activists. So I'll stop there, but happy to respond to questions here or online or in some other format.
Perfect, thanks, Julie. I'll wrap it up by, as I mentioned earlier, oh gosh, I am not so good at working my PowerPoint, sorry here. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, this is a self-select program. So if any faculty member is interested in teaching a Mayerson class, we are accepting, not applications, but requests, I guess is the better word, starting in spring of next, spring 2021. So the other thing I should mention too is that we have a very long Canvas site with a lot of resource materials, including what Axel has created about voting strategies. So if anyone would like access to that course, I'm happy to put you on for you to just kind of look around. We use it for current faculty, so we have information about in places that you need, assignments that you need to submit, little ones, for the faculty that are teaching in the current semester. But that page can also be used just for general resources related to service learning, how to look for, well, I don't know so much what's going on right now, but how to look for volunteer opportunities in the local area. We have some useful articles that you can read about service learning and good practices related to that, with regard to that. So you can contact Mark Nykirk, the Executive Director of the Scripps Howard Center for Civic Engagement, as well as me, and I'd be happy to set up a meeting via Zoom and to talk about your ideas, and no idea is a bad one, and even if you're just remotely interested but you decide you're not ready, it's perfectly fine. Just email me, and I'm always happy to help. And then I'll end with one thing, because I think this really speaks to the importance of this summit today. But my summer project has been working with Megan Downing and Joe Nolan from the Burkhart Center, and Mark as well. And we have just gotten an article accepted. It's in its final proof right now about the Mayerson Project and graduation rates. So our research has found that students who participate in Mayerson, which is high impact practice, have a significantly higher graduation rate than the general NKU university population. And we also found in our research that they have a lower drop rate from the Mayerson class. So that's pretty encouraging and powerful findings. And we ran the statistics. So yeah, thank you everybody. And I guess we'll just open this up for questions, comments.
You do have one question from Julie. She asks, did you give the students options you found for community need? Did you narrow down choices for students?
I could speak to that. So to give you an idea, so I teach Spanish at NKU, and I have Spanish is a little tricky in a lot of ways about how to make that connection with the community. So yes, what I've done, for example, when I've taught Spanish film, I pre-identified community needs. So I actually broke it down by demographics. So people with disabilities, immigrants, adolescents, and women. And I selected films, so for my course content, from Spain that talked about social issues related to those demographics. And then students were tasked with finding what nonprofits in the area addressed those demographics and what needs were there in the community. So yes, I have pre-selected ahead of time in a very general sense, either a demographic or a theme, to help kind of make that connection between the course content and the community.
Can I just add one thing, Kaisa?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me? Okay. Sometimes I've just allowed the students in their groups to make their own decisions as to what sort of community needs they want to focus on. Sometimes we have for different classes, different funders, and they might have certain requirements. So for example, ArtsWave has frequently funded a Mayerson course, and of course they want the funds to be invested in arts organizations that are meeting their goals. I have a feeling, I know I and probably other classes this semester might be asking the students to focus on what particular needs there might be right now, given the pandemic.
That's a really good point. I know that is an interest and a worry for many, not just in higher ed, but also in the nonprofit world and in the funder world that helps fund this program.
Thank you so much. I thought it was fabulous. I just don't even know how to get started, and I just loved it.
Thank you.
there are no other questions, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up because there is a 12 o'clock panel that I think a lot of people would like to go to. Thank you guys for coming today. Kaisa, if you have any final words.
No, I just would like to say thank you everyone for your time and your interest. And I'm just so proud of our Mayerson, I call them my Mayerson family, because I really feel a lot of times faculty will teach, over multiple semesters. So I've really gotten to know a lot of the campus community that I might not have. And it's a really wonderful program, and we'd like to keep growing it. So if anyone has any interest to jump on board and give it a go, I'm here for you at any time. Thanks.